WarsawJS.
Hello, today I will share my personal frontend overview as for 2022. Let's start with some disclaimer. As you all know, perspective matters. And here in the slide, in this picture, we have a third perspective. There is a comment which tells, I don't get it, he is equally bald-headed. So the perspective matters, and I'm telling about this because everything I'm going to through will be told from my personal perspective. Yeah, this is my personal frontend overview. So a couple of words about myself. My name is Mateusz. My surname is hard even for Polish people. Our lovely host was able to read it. So this is Chrzonstowski. Yeah. Here are the other social media you can find me in. And regarding GitHub, it's worth remembering this particular link. This is a link to this presentation. All slides are already online. I'm also showing them from the online, so hopefully network connection will work. So this is FE-overview, WarsawJS. I work at Glovo, and yeah, I think it's fourth time I'm presenting at WarsawJS, my third company, but it's actually good for the presentation because Glovo uses Vue. I previously worked with React and previously even with Angular. So I have some context on that as well. I also have some part-time activities, but let's skip them for now. So let's start with some facts in order to build the context for the opinions I can make later. So it's worth to start a talk about frontend, but starting with JavaScript itself. Like this is the crucial part in my eyes of the frontend ecosystem. Why? We will come back to this in a minute, but let's focus on this language itself, on this programming language. Yeah. So how to compare programming languages? How to compare their popularity or something? There is one thing like TIOBE programming index, and this is something which analyzes the search engines and how often people are looking for some programming languages. And this is the link to the original source, the methodology. You can read about this. But what is important for is that JavaScript is stable at the 7th place, somewhere here. So nothing fancy maybe, but it's stable, as I said. The top 3. It's now Python on top, but the second number is C. Previously, it was always Java. Now Java is third, and so on and so forth. But let's think a different way. When you look for something with Google or DuckDuckGo better, you probably type JavaScript, but what then? Probably then you are entering Stack Overflow, right? So let's focus not on TIOBE itself, but on Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is the best community for all the developers, as we know, and it has a survey each year, and in the latest results, JavaScript is the most popular programming language amongst responses. So there are over 80,000 responses. And JavaScript, in fact, for the 9th year in the 9 is top 1 programming language used on Stack Overflow by Stack Overflow users. So it's pretty important perspective. And then it's maybe even more important when looking further. So JavaScript, there is also the stat, like let's say, fanboy to hater ratio. JavaScript is not perfect. Right? Don't like it when they work with it, but TypeScript is something which catches attention here. Catches the attention. And TypeScript, as we know, is a superset of JavaScript. It's also worth looking at this when it comes to front-end development. Then, it's also not only this fanboy to hater ratio, but there is also a tab telling you what are the programming languages you want to learn. Don't use, but want. So JavaScript is the third one, TypeScript is the second one, and Python is top 1. So we see that JavaScript is very, very important. And this is even more important when you are a front-end developer and you hear that there are plenty of other techniques of communicating with machines that not only maybe so futuristic ones, but there are even smart speakers. Yeah, we use them on a daily basis. There is a comeback, let's say, textual way, a console-like input with all the chats we have. We have chatbots for WhatsApp, for Messenger, but we also have Slack with some comments. You can go with / something, and it executes your code behind the scenes. It's like a text interface, which is able to run some backend logic. So now, looking from this perspective, as a front-end developer, you may feel frightened, but don't worry, there is a still bright future for you. Front-end is used everywhere. Now you can also have mobile-like applications with progressive web apps or trusted web apps. There is a huge thing called WebAssembly, which helps, for instance, with the AutoCAD program, which is rather heavy desktop app. It used to be only desktop app, but out of nowhere, they decided to put it into the browser. And they had some problems with doing this. And they discovered this WebAssembly. So they compiled all the C code to WebAssembly. And now AutoCAD is also able to run in the browser. So it's also a way of going for people here and there in the companies. There is also a huge thing called Electron. So the opposite, right? You are not putting desktop app into the browser, but you are putting browser into a desktop app. So this is how Electron works. And it is also in many solutions like VS Code, for instance. And then this JavaScript itself can help us also address these issues I've mentioned already. So the smart speaker stuff can be written with Node.js, why not? And then we have also other things like function as a service, serverless, all the backend things on AWS and other cloud providers can be also written with JavaScript. And I'm going to share a secret with you. There is serverless here. And behind serverless technology, there are servers. And even serverless framework itself has its server written in JavaScript. So there is also a way of running JavaScript code on server. That's why I'm putting this on the top of this presentation. I'm starting with JavaScript because it's everywhere and it can be everywhere. We have runtime environments like Node.js, like Chromium, and we can easily use them to run our code on the server side. Node.js and Chromium together, we can treat it as one. This is the market leader. There is currently the long-term support version called version 16, let's say, called. There is also a huge focus on multi-threading in this newest development efforts for Node.js. And what can be funny, what is actually a real scenario is that JavaScript with this Chromium is used by SpaceX developers in their dashboards for steering the rockets and things like that. So all the interfaces are there used in the Chromium. Here is the link with the evidence. There was an Ask Me Anything session with SpaceX developers on Reddit, and they claimed that they use Chromium indeed. Okay, so it's interesting looking at Chromium out Node.js. Node.js is like an extracted JavaScript engine from Google Chrome. Yeah, it was this V8 interpreter of JavaScript extracted. Then we have Chromium, which adds some additional things for HTML and CSS. And on top of Chromium, we have Google Chrome, but not only. Also Microsoft Edge using Chromium. We have other browsers like Opera and so on. So it's kind of funny because in my eyes, when I started developing in 2013, it was like we had plenty of different browsers with different behaviors, and we have a king called jQuery, which was used to run on all the browsers in the same way. And nowadays, it's kind of opposite. We have one single browser, and we have many different frameworks to choose from. I think the number is even bigger than the number of Pokemons, right? But Pokemons is a good analogy because not only they were evolving from one to another, but also there were top 3 Pokemons, and we can say in the front-end world, we also have top 3 contenders competing on the top. But if you remember Pokemons correctly, there was also the 4th one. So here it is. And up with this 4, not something different like solid or something. There is also a page called, for instance, bestofjs.org, which checks some stats. What is the number of npm downloads a week? What is the number of total number of GitHub stars, and so on. So GitHub stars tells you about how developers love the framework, and npm is rather for telling you what is the actual production use, right? I would say this way. What's interesting here is Vue got divided into two things because it's created something similar to what Angular created when introducing a new second version of Angular. They have forked, not even forked, they started a new repository, and it happened also for Vue. When it comes to total number of stars, Svelte is number 4, Preact is also catching up, Vue is still the leader, but the Vue version second, and the third version is closing this list. You can see, of course, more details under the link, but we can also try to find what are the most popular frameworks recently. Yeah, as I said, we treat these GitHub stars as some kind of trends for developers, what they are currently into. And at this page, we can also find what is the number of added stars, recently added stars. So in the latest 12 months, so in the late year, what frameworks were most were gaining their stars faster than others. So React is top 1 in the growing popularity, let's say. Solid is something interesting. You can take a look at it. It's kind of like React, but it's not using virtual DOM. It's just have some hooks like API, which is used to all these hooks. Only hooks are validated and re-rendered, let's say, and DOM is pretty stable. There is no virtual DOM, as I said. Vue.js is also still in the second version is still catching nice traffic, let's say. Svelte is also here, Angular, and once again Vue. So we have these top 3 Pokemons, and let's talk about them in the alphabetical order. So let's start with Angular once again to provide you some interesting details about the Angular itself. So in this year, in particular, it happened that the old version of Angular got killed. Let's say it's finally over for all of you to know. In my eyes, it is like a framework, the first serious JavaScript framework. Yeah, from my perspective, it was like that, and it is not a thing now. We have just Angular, not AngularJS. This is the old version, this Angular 1.8 or something. Now we have just this Angular without one as a major version. And when it comes to React, this is also interesting. There is a nice report introduced by ThoughtWorks. They are introducing each edition, I don't know, in 3 months or something. This is really interesting. They are catching up some technologies you should assess, you should try, you should take a look at. But apart from this, of putting these technologies you should consider, they also introduce a dedicated paragraph just to point out that something is wrong with the React community, that over and over again they try to create another state management solution. And I think, yeah, this is the biggest difference between Angular and React. Yeah, Angular is the batteries included framework, which has opinionated structure you need to follow, and React is just a library. And because of that, there are some problems. When I join a React project, I always have the same problem. Like, I see the structure like that. When it comes to state management, there is actions and component and reducers usually folder, and the whole code organization doesn't tell me much on what the app is doing. This is like general services, tests, components, reducers. This is like a general way of dividing your code by type, by component type, not by the features. Yeah, it could be like users, projects, I don't know, customers, couriers, and so on. But no, it's like components. And if you have some problem with users, you need to find it in services, in components. You need to look for it in all over the places. And React doesn't help it. React hooks is not helping here as well. Usually there is just another part of that. And by the way, I'm not the only person who is skeptical about hooks and about this code organization. Not recently, but at the beginning of this year, there was also an popular opinion, let's say, from from one of the most famous React teachers that hooks are not exactly maybe the way to go. But this is happening on React. It's market leader. It's still the battle-tested solution handled by Facebook. So I'm just pointing out its problems, right? And when it comes to Vue, Vue is now rewritten in TypeScript. In the third version has also its new repository. There are some problems with moving from Vue 2 to Vue 3. It's kind of similar as it was with Angular and migration to Angular 2. It reminds me a bit these times, but I'm not as active observer of this as I was with Angular, but it seems from my perspective that it's kind of similar. Yeah, so I've talked through the top 3 frameworks, but we have also more of them, as I pointed out already. In fact, we have almost 2 million frameworks, libraries. The number comes from this web page, which analyzes the number of NPM packages. And what's interesting here, NPM, yeah, the red line is NPM. It was said at some point in time when Java was introduced or something that, yeah, Java has everything. So here is Java, yeah, the number of packages. When it comes to Python, yeah, you can also hear that it has everything. Battery is included. Some Python is somewhere here, yeah. And JavaScript is like 2 million packages since the beginning of. There were also frameworks before, maybe not as big number, but still. In average, it's like 850 plus packages each day. So it's not like new day, new frameworks. It's like new day, 850 frameworks. Some frameworks are introduced, some frameworks are removed. As I've shown with Angular, it's now deprecated, the original version. Same happened to Lerna. Lerna was also an important thing. I would say, from my understanding, at some point in time, Lerna was a synonym of monorepo. Yeah, and it also happened that because of the monorepo approach, we also have more and more packages because every single folder from the structure was introduced to NPM as a separate package. That was the monorepo about, basically. Yeah, but it's Lerna is now a dead project. We have other approaches for monorepos. This is what happens. What's also interesting, why this is so big, like frameworks daily. We not only have big frameworks like Angular, like React library, big solutions like Next.js or something. We also have, I would say, we mostly have micro frameworks. And here is my favorite example I'm sharing frequently, as much as I can. There is a package called isOdd. What this package does, there is just one exported function. And when you provide the argument to that function, it answers the question if it is the odd number. Yeah. So instead of writing one line of code, you can download npm package. And when you download this package, as you can see, it's not so uncommon. There is 400,000 developers each week which are doing this instead of writing a single line function. So by downloading this package, you also download its dependency. There is one crucial dependency to run this function. What is the dependency? Yes? The dependency actually here is number. Instead of, so in order to, if the number is odd, we need to answer the question if we have number, yeah? And instead of writing even half-line of code, you can download this package, and this is how 70 million developers each week do. So it can be funny now, but there was also a small package called leftpath in 2016. As the name tells, it was adding from the left side of the string, it was adding some white spaces, zeros. And at that point in time, it was possible to unpublish your packages from NPM. So leftpath was published, but it was unpublished because the developer, the maintainer, decided, let's say, angry at NPM. NPM removed one of his packages because some company wanted to have the same name, and the names are unique. Yeah, corporate asked NPM to remove, so they did this. So the developer removed his packages. What was the problem? The problem was left path was used by Babel. Babel was by React. React was in half of the internet, so half of the internet was broke because of the single left path dependency. It was 2016. We can say, well, too far away. NPM changed since then. It's much better now. By the way, the developer was blocked a bit. The package was again. So NPM made some hard decisions. Maybe it was needed, but it was hard, definitely. And when to similar situation, it still happens. In 2019, there was a problem with PM2 package because it was using a external dependency, downloading it through the internet. Dependency was doing nothing. It was logging in the console, something like that. Why was like that? PM2 developers wanted to check how actually installed. So the optional dependency from the internet was hitting this web page, and because of the traffic on the web page, they were checking how often they are installed. Yeah, and it appeared that wasn't responsive for a couple of something. Free was returned, and the result was the half of the internet. Another half of the internet was broken again. In 2000, we have other NPM packages which were overtaken by the. They were starting. So I can't do this anymore. I need some contributors. There was a nice contributor. I will take this over. He was taking this over and introducing a version. Was, for instance, Bitcoin miner, by the way of doing, and it's also a password stealer for some cases, and so on and so forth. So this is like a never-ending story, and to point it out yet another time that it is unstable and or battle-tested frameworks is odd and its number. Here is the example from this year. So this year, beginning of this year, I think January, there was a problem with libraries, colors, and faker. So the author of the libraries, it's not possible anymore to unpublish from NPM, yeah? But how about publishing a new version which breaks the existing functionality and, for instance, prints in the console liberty, and flag. So this is what happened, and another half of the internet was experience. This is an interesting history of how I think, yeah, interesting, but maybe for the offline discussion later after my talk. So he and now not only NPM reacted, but also GitHub itself. So now it's getting like it's starting. It looks like the start of some kind of war. Open source developers and tooling around open source, right? For a moment, this Marek developer was suspended even from GitHub. Yeah, he didn't use his GitHub account anymore. So yeah, that was one person, maybe thing. Yeah, he also had house at some point in time by accident. So he had some problems, but it's not the only problem. Yeah, there's more with open source and how to maintain it, how to properly manage it. To put you another, he is the author of Node.js, but at some point in time he resigned from. There is Node Foundation, which is taking over the responsibility, maintaining and so on, and he just decided he doesn't need to do anything. Yeah, but he decided, first of all, he had a speech like what I regret, 10 things I regret about Node.js, and then he introduced a new thing called Dino. You can find some talks on WarsawJS YouTube channel about Dino. There is another runtime environment for JavaScript, server side JavaScript, in fact TypeScript. But yeah, as I said, he doesn't need to do anything. He decided, let's start a new project. And he wasn't suspended from GitHub or NPM, but what happened to him was, I think, even worse. So there were plenty of comments like, Please explain, why do you do this? Unbelievable. Please close this project. Here you have a list of issues for Node.js. Just go there and fix them. So things like that, yeah. And why it happened, I'm not sure. I mean, this is an example of hate itself. Yeah. So when it comes to Dino, there is also a note about it inside the Stack Overflow survey, but in the category of other tools. So it's not catching enough attention. So that's why I'm referring in my personal front-end overview to Dino as much. But yeah, you can take a look at this, give it a try. It is a different approach. Yes, it's more like browser-like approach. There is no node modules, for instance. You can just import something from the internet and run it safely right now in the console. So okay, so are here and there, and I think that the good way of open source is what Facebook does. Yeah, also Vue.js. It helped. There is a big company baking the solution, but there are also like open collective initiatives which helps here. Yeah, this is a nice summary. So open source is the main. This is the comment from the pull request from the Marak, who was introducing the new version, destroying his old version of Colors and Faker. So yeah, open source is the main vein in the world of technology, and not supporting is one of the biggest. And yeah, I also wanted to point out that there are some risks with big companies handling source, like some biased opinions. So Google or Microsoft can have too much power with all the things they are taking. But we should just observe it, and for now we can easily enjoy the way all the tools bought by them are integrated together. Yeah. So so here is the example of GitHub Copilot used inside the VS Code. In the online version, it's all integrated thanks to Microsoft owning all the pieces, and this is like that. Yeah, this is almost the last slide. Other trends which didn't fit to the previous conversation. We have more and more powerful tools understood and used fully by less and less developers. Maybe this is the natural way. On the other hand, we have other tools, new tools, which hides the complexity of the previous tools, React App, and so on. This is what happened in Java world a couple of years ago with Spring, for instance, Spring Boot, and so on. So maybe this is the natural way. Here are the examples: Webpack, NPM, Package.json. More and more is needed there. And when it comes to browsers themselves, they are closer and closer to the operating systems that to simple programs running your JavaScript or HTML. This is what happens in our world, and this is what happens with JavaScript. Here is the example of all the potential, let's say, features which can be introduced in the JavaScript, but squeezed together into to fit into the one slide. So yeah, it's hard to reason on them, but they are not introduced all at once. It's not 2015 anymore. They are introducing in the iteratively manner, so hopefully it won't be as bad.